Hi, I'm Howard Chui, and this is the Blackberry Tour on TELUS. The Blackberry Tour is the newest QWERTY BlackBerry for CDMA networks, but it also has a GSM radio with quad-band GSM support and HSDPA 2100. Really, the GSM is more for roaming. And on the back, you see it actually has a SIM card slot here, so I don't have one installed right now. Let's check the software version. This one's running 4.7.1.40. So the Tour has one feature which is better than all the other Blackberries, and that is that it has 256 megs of RAM. The Storm, for example, only has 128, so it's good if you run a lot of programs. Let's check it out. So here we have a single speaker, left key, which can be configured to launch applications, voice dial, that sort of thing. Here you have a full-sized 3.5mm headphone jack, volume keys, and a right button which can be reconfigured as well. Here's a micro USB slot for charging and syncing. Hold button, mute button. Now the back has a 3.2 megapixel autofocus camera plus a flash, and it's kind of hard to see, but this is the back actually has a carbon fiber finish. It's pretty thick. I don't know if it's actually carbon fiber, but it feels substantial for plastic. And one thing I like is that the battery cover attaches like this, so it won't slide this way. Now, one thing I noticed is that it's hard to see here, but the trackball doesn't stick out on the Tour as much as it does on the Curve. You can't really see it, but I notice it when I'm doing this a lot. My thumbs tend to drag on these keys, and sometimes when I'm pressing in, I hit the backspace button by accident. So it's not a big deal, but it's something I noticed. Now, speed-wise, I'm going to compare the Tour with the 8900. I find that the Tour is generally about half a second quicker than the 8900. For example, I'm going to launch the camera application, see which one loads faster. You see the Tour launches it just a little bit faster. Again, you probably won't notice this, but you do when you're comparing them side by side. Size-wise, the Tour is a little bit thicker, a little bit wider, and it's also slightly taller. They're both about the same thickness. And speaking of thickness, so is the Storm. They're all about the same length. The Storm is about the same size as the Tour. This is the Storm, the Tour, and the 8900. And the Storm is just a tiny bit wider. It's hard to see on the camera. Now, if you're on CDMA and you like QWERTY, your only choice has been the 8800 World or the Curve. So here's an 8800. This isn't a World, but it's close enough. You'll see the 8800 has a slightly wider keyboard, while the Curve, again, this is not a Curve you get on CDMA, but it's close enough. The Curve has a narrower keyboard and it has rounder keys. I prefer the bigger keyboard on the 8800. It's just easier to type on. Well, I guess the corollary to that is that I prefer the Tour's larger keyboard over this one. Although this keyboard is a little clickier, I like that. Whereas this one, they're not quite as clicky. Now, feature-wise, the Tour isn't that different from other Blackberries besides the extra RAM. you still get the Blackberry, you get Biz, you get Blackberry Enterprise server support, threaded SMS. One area where I'm disappointed is the browser, in that the browser is unchanged from the other ones. Well, maybe not this one. It still doesn't support tab browsing, and it's still kind of sluggish. So hopefully BlackBerry will address that in a future update. You get BlackBerry Maps, you get a music player that lets, one thing I like about the music player is that you can use the keyboard to search for a specific song. You do get a couple of extra games. I don't know whether that's because this has a newer OS or what. The Tour comes with a leather belt holster. It's the kind that you can twist around. The Storm has a single speaker on the back, whereas the Tour's is on the left. I find that the Storm's speaker is better. They both reach similar volume levels, but the Storm sounds better at higher levels. On the Tour, I find the speakers begins to break up about when you're about 8/10 of the way to maximum volume. I found the cameras, while both are 3.2 megapixel with a flash, I find the Tour's camera, or the Tour, tends to take better pictures than the Storm. Whereas on the Storm, I find a lot of my indoor pictures turn out blurry. They aren't on the Storm, so I don't know whether it's because it's easier to take pictures by holding it like this and pressing in, whereas on the Storm you kind of have to hold it like this and press in on the screen or use this button. They could very well have the same camera, but I take better pictures with this one. RF wise, I find they're very similar, but the Tour seems to be a little bit more picky about where you're holding it. Let's check out the signal levels. So here you can see the Tour's at 81 dBm, while the Storm is also, well, it's at 82. So they're very similar, but when you walk around and or if you put them down somewhere, I find that the Tour's tends to jump around more than it does on the Storm. Sound quality wise, they're also very different. The Storm sounds it's kind of harsh sounding, whereas here it's much cleaner, but it's slightly muddy sounding. As far as earpiece volume goes, this is very loud. You can really hurt your ears with this one, whereas the Storm, it's not quite as loud. So this is the Tour. I like the QWERTY keyboard, high-res display, double the RAM, 256 megs, and the loud earpiece. What didn't I like? The speaker could sound a little better. There's no Wi-Fi, and I wish the trackball stuck out a little bit more. So what did I think about it? I liked it. I'm Howard Choi, and that was my BlackBerry Tour review.